What a view! This is incredible. An Ontario County nonprofit. Overlook Horizon high-altitude balloons.
3, 2, 1, launch.
Hey guys, Tori here from Overlook Horizon. Good morning. It is, what day are we on now? Tuesday, October 6th, 2020. It is 7:05 a.m. on the East Coast here where I am. We are an early morning launch here today. So we're getting everything up and running here. We've had Scrubtober has affected us for many weeks now. Many weeks, and hopefully this is going to be the end of it here this morning, because we're launching Starlink 12, what I'm calling Starlink 12. We'll get into the naming a little bit here in a minute. We have to talk about that every time because people get confused about the naming. I'm confused about the naming. I don't understand the naming either. We're just going with it. So, well, why don't we talk about it now? So basically, we're calling this Starlink 12. This is the 12th launch of the version 1.0 satellites. There was one launch of the version 0.9 set of satellites. There were 60 of those that were launched months ago. A lot of people count that as Starlink 1, which would make this today Starlink 13. I don't count that as Starlink 1 because that was version 0.9, launch 1, and then they went to version 1.0, launch 1. So it's kind of two ones, or maybe you count that as launch 0. I don't know. We're calling this Starlink 12. It's the 12th launch of the version 1.0 satellites. That's how we come up with the name. So good morning, everybody. Let's see. I see a couple of comments coming in before we get to all our stuff here. We'll pull up the SpaceX stream. You can actually even see here we got a live look, not a replay. We'll get rid of the replay text. There's the live look from Launch 321 of Kennedy Space Center's Launch Complex 39A there. Weather this morning was red for violating the cloud rule conditions. Same one that got us yesterday. We violated the cloud rule, but they didn't go into fuel loading yesterday. They called the launch. They looked at the weather. They said, there's no chance. We're not going to do it. They didn't even start fuel loading. They've started fuel loading today, which is a good sign. That means they think there's a chance that they might actually launch. So there's a chance that we may end Scrubtober today. So it was red earlier today, and now it's actually green. So about maybe 10 or 15 minutes ago it switched from red to green. I see a hole in the clouds. Yeah, it does kind of. You can see it right there. Can't we launch right through that hole in the clouds? Let's go now. What time is launch? Well, if you keep an eye on our T-minus countdown clock up here, we're about 21 minutes away from launch. That'll be up here in the corner in our events list. And actually, when I switch to here, it's supposed to be there as well. There, let's turn it on before I forget to do that later. What's the probability? Let's get into the probability of launch today. We could talk about that. From the 45th Space Wing, our weather conditions here today are 30% chance of violating our launch conditions. That means we are 70% go, 30% no-go. Primary concern, as we just mentioned, cumulus cloud rule. Can't launch through thick cumulus clouds. Why? What's the big deal about a cloud? You can create rocket-induced lightning if you travel through big, thick clouds. Rocket-induced lightning, no good. You had the famous Apollo 12 incident, the SCE to AUX. The rocket got struck by lightning. We don't want that. Lightning, bad. So traveling through thick clouds can, even if the cloud is not producing lightning, thick clouds with a rocket traveling through it can induce lightning. It's called rocket-induced lightning. That's why thick clouds are no good. So that's the primary concern today, is really just that. Now, this forecast does not include upper level winds, famously, but winds were not much of a concern when I looked at it earlier here. You got ground level winds, 5-6 miles per hour. No big deal. We can handle that. Upper level winds here, which are in your upper atmosphere, around 30 to 40,000 feet in altitude. It's around 10 kilometers in altitude. Upper level winds here, only 22 miles per hour. You can actually even see a little bit of a swirly loo-hoo here. We get a little bit of a low pressure system here. But yeah, so our upper level winds, 23 miles per hour, not a concern. So we're in good shape. If this stuff here, 120 mile per hour upper level winds, was down here, that would be a concern. This up here is a little quicker. That could be a concern, but fortunately the rocket, remember, gets up and over the winds pretty quickly. So really you're only worried about ground level winds and upper level winds like right here, right in that area, because it gets up and over those very quickly. It just has to fly through them in order to do that. So, and again, this morning we are launching Starlink satellites. This is an instantaneous launch window for all intents and purposes. It's actually technically not an instantaneous launch window. There is a window, but it's only like a 15-minute window. And once they start fuel loading, which they have done, it pretty much turns into an instantaneous launch window, because if there's any reason to hold the count, there's not enough time for them to recycle and still make the launch window. So any holds called would scrub the launch today. Hopefully we don't have that, but even though it's a 15-minute window, now that fuel loading has started, it's an instantaneous launch window at this point. Let's see. Hey, GVA Morning Show, thanks for the super chat there. Morning, Pad 40 Falcon has been lowered. Yes, that is true. Launch Pad 40, which is where the GPS 3 mission is launching from, which scrubbed the other day due to an engine issue. High pressure in the turbo pump area. That was scrubbed. What day was that? Friday? So I'm losing track of all the scrubs we've had so far, but we expected maybe it would go the next day, and it did not, and we've actually heard nothing the last couple days, and now the rocket's been lowered horizontal, which likely means they're going to bring it back into the horizontal integration facility. Maybe not. Maybe they just leave it on the pad and inspect it right there. But once it goes horizontal, it usually means we got a little more of a delay coming. So it could still be a couple days for GPS 3 from Launchpad 40. But thank you, GVA, for the super chat there. Hey, hands up, watching with my Papa John from Scotland. Well, hello, Papa John. Watching from Scotland. I love it. Thanks for the support there. Hands up. Fritz 46. So many scrubs. I know, right? We're going to end it today. Justin Ford. How high up are upper level winds? Usually that's referring to 30 to 40,000 feet in altitude, right around 10 kilometers. That's where you consider your upper level winds. That's usually where the winds are the strongest. That's the level of the jet stream typically. So that's your strongest level winds. And typically they can get strong in a hurry, which causes wind shear. So you can have the winds go in a completely different direction. They could be a fast increase in speed. So when a rocket hits that, it's like running into a brick wall. Rockets have very good vertical strength this way, not great strength this way. So rocket going up through the atmosphere hits upper level winds that push it this way. The engine says, whoa, not that way. We want to go this way. Pushes it back this way. Then you get this kind of movement. That's not good. That's where you get kaboomas. We don't want that. We don't want that. All right, so trajectory here today. Heading to the northeast because these are Starlink satellites. They all go to the northeast. I'll show you why in just a second here, but launching from Launch Complex 39A, the big historic Launch Complex 39A right there. That's where Apollo launched from, where Space Shuttle launched from, where Crew Dragon launches from, and where Falcon Heavy launches from. As we mentioned just a minute ago, SpaceX also has another pad, Launch Pad 40, a little bit further to the south. Not using that one here today, but Crew Dragon can't launch from there. Falcon Heavy cannot launch from there. Only a regular Falcon 9 with a satellite commercial payload of some sort. Now, heading to the northeast, we do have our drone ship out here. Of course, I still love you. Picking up the first stage booster. It's out there for the taxi pickup. Hopefully we get a nice, beautiful first stage landing out there. And then we also have our green pin there as our payload fairing catching ships. Oh, what happened? We gotta turn that down. The green pin there is our payload fairing catching ships, and they are going to attempt payload fairing catch attempts with each half of the payload fairing. Wow, say payload fairing 10 times fast. It gets hard to do at 7 o'clock in the morning, my time. All right. Hey, I don't know how to say this. I don't know how to say this name. I'm going to say Lim, because that's what it says at the end. But thanks for joining a membership here. Picked up the astronaut membership, which will actually get you early access to my video that's coming out later today. It actually, for members in the rocket engineer or the astronaut tier, got early access to our video yesterday. A day early. New video series coming out later today. But people in our rocket engineers or astronaut membership or Patreon members can get access to that early. If you want to check it out now. I'm kind of excited for it. But if you're not, just look for it later today, because it is coming out later today. All right. Oh, and the other thing I was going to show here is with Starlink satellites, there is enough fuel left, and it is a low Earth orbit satellite, so they are going to bring the second stage back home, not recover it. It's going to come home in pieces. This is the debris field for the second stage when it re-enters the atmosphere. Breaks up into a million pieces. So that's what we're looking at here today for trajectory. Let's go. Let's cover our other, looks like SpaceX is live. So one other thing we're going to cover before they get started here is the Starlink satellites. So low Earth orbit constellation of satellites here providing high-speed internet service to the people. High-speed internet. In order to do that, you need lots and lots of satellites. We have satellite internet right now. It's in geostationary orbit. It's very far away, means latency is really low. That's your speed, which is it's important. So latency is really low from geostationary satellites. You can't get great speed way out there. These are low Earth orbit satellites, much faster to communicate with, but the problem with that is low Earth orbit satellites fly by, and then they're gone. So you need another one to fly right behind it so you can connect to it, and then on and on and on. So they just keep flying by and you connect to the new one that's flying by. So you can see the web that they're weaving over the planet here. These are all the Starlink satellite orbital paths that are currently up there right now. Big set of them. We're about 746 or 746 or 748 or somewhere in that range, about 750 satellites that are up there right now. 800 or so get you partial operational capacity for the United States and Canada. Get up to about 4,000. That gets you even more operational capacity for the world. Kind of partial operational capacity for the world. Then when you get up to 12,000 satellites, 12,000 is full operations for the entire globe. Then there's another tier that is 40,000 satellites, which is like full operations, on-orbit spares, different tiers of speed. So you got low Earth orbit satellites, lower Earth orbit satellites that may be even faster, might even cost a little more. So there's going to be a lot of them up there. And then the big concern is always, well, my concern right now is why we're 10 minutes out and SpaceX hasn't actually started talking, but that's always a bit of a concern. But the concern with Starlink is that they're going to ruin the night sky. Now, even with that many satellites, it sounds like a lot of satellites. We still got room to maneuver in space. It's not really going to be an issue for maneuvering in space, but it could potentially be an issue with the night sky and with astrophotography, with research, things like that. So that's really where the big concern is with astrophotography and getting these long exposure photos of galaxies and planets and anything in the night sky, really. And SpaceX is working on that. So all of these satellites that are launching today have a reduced reflectivity coating on them to try to minimize the impact of minimize the reflectivity of the satellites so that they don't shine so brightly. Okay, this is... Oh, here we go.
Eastern time launch from Launch Pad 39A at the Kennedy Space.
Got nervous because I didn't hear anything. It was muted.
Hello from SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. My name is Shiva Bharadwaj, and I'm a space operations engineer here at SpaceX. Now, you are watching a live webcast for our 13th Starlink mission and our 17th mission for this year. If you've been following along at home, we've had to stand down this mission a few times now due to unfavorable weather conditions, as well as an out-of-family reading on one of our ground system sensors. But all the vehicle systems and ground systems looking healthy today. Weather, we're tracking one item, possible cumulus clouds along the ascent trajectory, so we'll keep you apprised of that as we hear more on the nets. Now, to date, we have launched more than 700 Starlink satellites to orbit. If you're not familiar, Starlink is a constellation of satellites that can provide high-speed, low-latency internet all over the globe, particularly in remote and rural areas where connectivity is often limited and sometimes completely unavailable. We will be performing 2 second stage burns today to deploy those 60 Starlink satellites about 1 hour into the mission. Those 2 burns allow us to deploy the satellites into a circular orbit, which helps them get to their final orbit, about 550 kilometers above the Earth, much faster. Now, at this point, we are just under T-minus 9 minutes to go until liftoff. All systems looking go for on-time liftoff this morning.
All right, keep that weather clear. Get those clouds out of the way.
On your screen is a live view
room
of the Falcon 9. That's our 2-stage launch vehicle. Falcon 9 is 70 meters tall, which is greater than the wingspan of a 747 aircraft. This particular booster flew for the first time in May, taking Bob and Doug safely to the International Space Station on their historic mission. It also flew again in July for the Anasis 2 mission for the Republic of Korea. And the bottom 2/3 of the vehicle that you can see covered in soot from its previous 2 flights, that's what we refer to as the first stage. Its job is to accelerate the vehicle through the Earth's atmosphere to space with the help of 9 Merlin engines that it has at its base. We will be attempting to recover this first stage for the 3rd time on our drone ship named, Of Course I Still Love You. You can see on your screen there, about 624 kilometers off the east coast of Florida. Now, our first stage is designed to be reflown 10 or more times with minimal refurbishment between flights. It'll actually be the 15th time this year that we're flying a flight-proven booster and the 43rd time that we're doing so to date. Atop the first stage is the black carbon fiber inner stage, and on top of that is Falcon 9's second stage. It has a single Merlin vacuum or MVAC engine, which is actually hidden from view inside that black inner stage. And once the first and second stages separate about 2.5 minutes into the mission, the Merlin vacuum will ignite to carry those 60 Starlink satellites onto a circular orbit around our planet. Falcon 9 has been loading propellants since the T-minus 35 minute mark. As a reminder, we use a rocket-grade form of kerosene called Rocket Propellant 1, or RP1, as the fuel, and superchilled liquid oxygen, or LOX, as our oxidizer to power Falcon 9. Currently, RP1 is fully loaded on both the first and second stage, liquid oxygen nearly fully loaded on both stages. LOX will be continued to be topped off right until the last 2 minutes before liftoff. Now, at the very top of the rocket is this nose cone structure. This is what we refer to as the satellite fairing, and inside that is a stack of 60 Starlink satellites.
Let me get out of the way.
The fairing's job is to protect the satellites from aerothermal heating, aerodynamic loads, and contamination during the ascent portion of the mission. But once we get to the vacuum of space, we actually don't need it anymore. So we'll jettison those fairing halves as the second stage continues its journey to orbit. Now, one of the fairing halves is brand new, but the other previously supported 2 Starlink missions, one in May of 2019 and another in March of this year. And we will be attempting to recover both halves today using our recovery ships named Mystery and Mischief.
There they are. Looks
at
like
this
they're
point,
rocking and rolling a bit.
Update on the weather. The 45th Space Wing gave us a 70% chance of go, the primary concern being cumulus clouds along the ascent trajectory.
Right.
Still waiting to see if we will be go for launch at 7:29 Eastern time, but from what I've heard, we are trending towards green for launch.
What does that mean?
Now,
what is it currently? Is it currently red or green?
Weather and range looking good for an on-time launch. Weather, of course, with that watch item right until the final minutes before liftoff.
Oh, I don't like the sound of that.
Now, as many of you know, the Starlink team is well into the first phase of testing with our private beta program. During this time, the Starlink team has been collecting latency statistics and performing standard speed tests on the system. The initial results from these tests have actually been really promising, showing super low latency and download speeds in excess of 100 megabits per second. As we've mentioned previously, we are still in the beginning stages of building out our global satellite internet constellation, but the initial results do look promising, and we're looking forward to rolling out a public beta later on this year. Earlier this week, we also heard from emergency responders in Washington State who have been using Starlink for their purposes and to help bring the residents of Malden, Washington internet service as they rebuild their community following devastating wildfires that hit that area back in August. A representative from the Washington State Military Department said he's never worked any tactical satellite equipment that has been so quick to set up and anywhere near as reliable. And the way that these emergency responders deployed Starlink is actually representative of how it currently works best in remote and rural areas where internet connectivity is sometimes unavailable. As I mentioned, the network is still very much a work in progress, so if you'd like to help build it out, head on over to SpaceX.com and check out our careers page. And if you'd like to receive updates on Starlink news and service availability in your area, please go and visit us at starlink.com.
All right, we're still watching the weather.
At this point, we are minus 4 minutes from liftoff.
It looks so good.
Just heard on the nets that we are go on weather. Falcon 9 is moving into the final stages of countdown. Vehicle is looking healthy. At this point, the first and second stages have nearly 1 million pounds of that rocket-grade kerosene RP1 fuel on board and liquid oxygen. And the clouds that you're seeing there around the second stage is from actually that super chilled liquid oxygen. We do periodic vents. You actually just saw one there as we continue to top up those propellant tanks until the T-minus 2 minute mark. And when that cold oxygen comes into contact with the moist Florida air, it actually causes water vapor to condense and form actual clouds around the vehicle. Now we're expecting the first stage to finish up prop loading, so it'll close out LOX loading just under 10 seconds from now. And second stage will be shortly after at about T-minus 2 minutes.
All right, we're coming up here on it now. Weather is green, it sounds like, and it looks great. I mean, look, you see blue skies there. Just launch right through it.
Now about T-minus 60 seconds, Falcon 9.
LOX load closed out.
There's that call out for LOX load closeout. About T-minus 60 seconds, Falcon 9 will transition into startup. That means that the rocket's internal flight computers will have taken over the launch countdown, and they will continue to have control of the vehicle all the way through the rest of the mission. At this point as well, the Starlink payload is continuing to look healthy. No issues being tracked by the Falcon 9 team at this moment. Weather is go for launch. Range is currently green for launch. Coming up around T-minus 2 minutes, we'll hear a second call out here for stage 2 LOX load complete.
Let's launch this baby. Let's light this candle. And we're going to talk a little bit in between launch and deployment. We got some time here.
Stage 2 LOX load is closed out.
Beautiful shot of pad 39A with the crew tower to the next of it. Not using that today.
Big vent coming up here.
We'll actually see some venting from that large truss structure on the left-hand side of the vehicle. You can see it starting there. That truss structure is what we refer to as the transporter erector. That's what rolled out Falcon 9 to the pad and provides electrical power as well as the propellants that we've been loading into the vehicle. At this point, we're just venting out liquid oxygen that is in the lines on the transporter erector before transitioning into the final steps before liftoff.
Yep, that's the last big vent there as they drain it out. Drain the lines.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
So with that call out, Falcon 9 is now on autonomous internal control.
30 seconds is the big marker. That's when they would cut off for weather.
They will give their final go for launch.
LD is go for launch.
There's the go. At 30 seconds, they could cut for
Falcon
weather,
9
but
team's ready to go, vehicle ready to go, weather and range ready to support. Why don't we listen in to these final 30 seconds of terminal count?
Here we go.
T-minus 30 seconds.
Looks like we're gonna go for it.
Stage 1 flight press.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff.
We're pitching downrange.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
T plus 40 seconds, Falcon 9 successfully lifting off from Launch Pad 39A at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. We're taking that Starlink orbit to its first, Starlink satellites to its first targeted orbit and eventually a circular orbit. We actually just throttled down for maximum dynamic pressure, or max Q, on those 9 Merlin engines. We'll expect to hear that call out here shortly.
Vehicle supersonic.
All right. Yes. We finally got through Scrubtober.
So call out there for having gone through the point of maximum aerodynamic pressure. That's when the loads on the vehicle are the highest from the combination of our velocity, but increasing while the density of the atmosphere decreases. Now, coming up in just about a minute, we will have 3 events happening back to back. First will be main engine cutoff, or MECO. That's where we'll shut down those 9 Merlin engines. You can see the plume expanding from them on the back of the rocket here. That'll be in preparation for stage separation. Now, stage separation is where the first and second stages will separate. First stage will continue on a parabolic trajectory towards the drone ship, while the second stage continues on to the final event, or second engine start number 1. That's where that Merlin vacuum engine will ignite. And once it lights up, it'll propel the second stage along with Starlink satellites into orbit. Actually heard earlier that we've started chill in on the turbo pumps of the Merlin vacuum engine to get it ready for that full flow of propellant and oxidizer. So coming up just about 12 seconds from now, expect to see MECO, its main engine cutoff, then stage separation, and then at about T plus 2 minutes and 45 seconds, second engine start number 1.
Should be MECO here. There it is. You see the engine shut off? Stage sep.
Stage separation confirmed.
Watch the stiffener ring on the right screen break off. Right there. Little stiffener ring on the engine bell there.
There is successful stage separation and second engine start. You can see the grid fins deploying on the left-hand side of your screen. That's the first stage. On the right-hand side of your screen is the Merlin vacuum engine starting to glow brightly with the heat of that combustion reaction. First stage making its way back towards
acquisition of
planet
signal,
Earth.
Maryland.
Coming up here should be fairing deployment shortly.
Separation confirmed.
There's our fairing. There it goes.
There's a call out on the nets and a beautiful shot of the Starlink satellites. You can see on the right-hand side there a little bit of planet Earth.
There it is. See it by
Actually,
the
you can
engine
see
bell.
a fairing half there trailing away. Now, as a reminder, we will be attempting to recover both the fairing halves today on our recovery ships, Mystery and Mischief, that are also stationed in the Atlantic Ocean.
Now, we'll probably get news. They won't show the actual catch live, but we'll probably get news on whether or not it was successful or not, because deployment is about an hour after
Second
launch
stage
today.
heading towards its targeted drop-off orbit.
And usually the fairing catch is about 45 minutes after launch, so we should hopefully hear if it was successful or not.
We are actually pitching the first stage vehicle to try to get those Merlin engines facing towards the atmosphere.
Signal Bermuda.
Those periodic gas clouds that you see along the first stage are actually from our attitude control system. And once we get to the top of the Earth's atmosphere, we'll ignite 3 of the 9 Merlin engines for entry burn. That'll help slow down
We got
the
a
first
space
stage
mouse.
as it re-enters the upper parts of the Earth's atmosphere. And the second of those burns will actually happen much closer to touchdown on the drone ship. That's the landing burn, where we will ignite just a single Merlin engine at the center of the set of 9. And that'll slow down the vehicle rapidly before hopefully a soft touchdown on our drone ship. On the right-hand side of your screen, continuing to see the Merlin vacuum engine continuing to burn. This is a pretty long burn for the Merlin vacuum engine. This will be going until about T+8 minutes
Second stage on
and
nominal
48
trajectory.
seconds. Call out there from the navigation officer that the second stage is on a nominal trajectory at this point.
We're going to talk about what the space mouse is.
Flying
We
right down the
randomly
middle of
just
the
calling
bars.
out things. We'll talk about that
Cool
in
shot from
between
the interstage
while we're waiting for
on the
deployment.
left-hand side of your screen, that's looking up at where the second stage previously was, looking out towards space, because those Merlin engines are pointed towards planet Earth. Coming up in about a minute from now, we'll expect to see that entry burn start. Entry burn will expected to last about 20 seconds. Again, that'll be 3 Merlin engines, and usually you can actually see the plume sort of creeping up the side of the rocket, since the vehicle is right now both going thousands of miles an hour.
So we got coming up here, our entry burn
At
is
this point, the
about
first stage
15
has
seconds.
reached the highest point of its orbit, the apogee. So it is on the downhill portion of the of its trajectory. You can see Earth getting bigger and bigger.
Hey, my buddy Chad Colby.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
What's happening, Chad? Yeah, we got to talk about the space mouse a little bit later.
Entry burn startup.
There's entry burn.
Startup of those 3 Merlin 1D engines on the first stage. Second stage continuing to burn nominally.
Expected loss of signal, Cape.
Hey, David Hoskins, thanks for the super chat. Says really enjoying the show and happy to launch today. Thanks. I am also very
So
happy.
with that,
We
will
ended the
continue
scrub
on the first
fest.
stage to apply some attitude control.
Look at
from
the
those,
clouds coming
attitude
in.
control thrusters. And as the atmosphere gets thicker and thicker, the grid fins will actually start to gain most of the control authority.
That looks
Second stage
cool.
on nominal trajectory.
And the grid fins will continue to fly Falcon 9 in, creating,
Loss of signal here.
giving us aerodynamic control.
That's normal.
Looks like
That
we just lost
happens.
the link as it re-enters there. Here's a shot of the drone ship. Again, that's 624 kilometers off the east coast of Florida.
Question is going to be, can we get uninterrupted video from the drone ship? A lot of times the drone ship shakes, it'll interrupt the video signal. So that's completely normal if it does, but every once in a while we can get clean video. Landing is still coming up. Landing is not until about 8:24 there on the clock. So we're just under a minute to landing.
The stage has such a large nozzle is to try to get the most out of the propulsive gases that we're producing in the propulsion chamber. And so that allows the second stage to be a little more efficient in the vacuum of space. Coming up here, we expect to hear a call out for landing burn start on the first stage. That'll be just a single center Merlin engine.
Landing burn startup.
There's our landing burn.
Shortly after, we'll expect to see landing leg deploy.
Can we get a
And
clean
hopefully a
feed?
touchdown on the drone ship.
Terminal guidance.
Stage 1, landing leg deploy.
Landing legs. Show it. Clean video. Yeah.
Looks like right
Landing confirmed.
in the center. That marks 61 successful
All right.
FTS is
recoveries. Third time for this booster. Now, coming up about 8 seconds from now, second stage is also going to shut down its engine for second engine cutoff number 1. Keep an eye out for that on your right, on the right-hand side of your screen.
All right. Clean video feed. I love it.
Seco 1.
There we go. Seco.
And successful shutdown of the Merlin vacuum engine. Navigation officers will be assessing whether we have ended up in the right orbit. And most of the way up, we were right down the middle.
Nominal orbit insertion.
So good call out
Nominal
there. We're
orbit.
in the first of 2 planned orbits. Now, the second stage is going to coast in this orbit for about the next 30 minutes. We're actually going to take a break while it's doing that, but we'll leave you with an animation that shows exactly where the stage is in this coast phase. And we'll see you back here at T plus 42 minutes for reignition of the second stage's engine. See you back shortly.
Okay, so they're going to come back here in a little bit. There's our Starlink satellites right there. You can see that. And this rod right here is actually the tension rod that holds them in place. That's what's actually going to release and let them go. When these Starlink satellites actually deploy, they do something really interesting, which is they don't have a spring pusher system. So a lot of times satellites, where's my Dragon? Let me get my Dragon here. There's my Falcon 9. My Falcon 9 upper stage and my Dragon. I really need to paint this. But anyways, a lot of times, this is obviously not a satellite, this is my Crew Dragon, but a lot of times there's a spring pusher system that's in between the two there. And when it's time to deploy, the spring pusher kind of just boop, pops it off and then pushes it there. The Starlink satellites don't do that. The Starlink satellites, the second stage will actually start this spin. I'm gonna do it vertically, but it actually spins like horizontally. This is just harder to do. But it spins like this, and then it just releases the tension rod. It doesn't push them away, it just lets go. And that release there lets them fly off and disperse themselves. And it kind of looks something like this. So here's our simulated upper stage here, thanks to Kerbal Space Program here. So when it's time to deploy the satellites, which is going to be, it's still not for a little while here now, but when it's time to deploy, they're going to spin around like this. And that rotation, basically the satellites that are on the outside are traveling faster because they're covering the same amount of distance as the satellites on the inside. Or they're covering more distance in the same amount of time, rather. And then they just let go, and you can see the satellites just fan out like this, all on their own, with nothing in between them to push them apart. So they're just kind of spread out and fan out just like a deck of cards. So that's kind of how that works when they do it. Now this is not, they do it a little more gracefully than I do, but this is a pretty decent animation here, right here. So they kind of just fan out like that and away they go. Some of the satellites might bump into each other. That's okay, they're actually designed to do that. And then after they spread out far enough, they give them some time to spread out. After they do that, then they can actually start to raise their orbits, because where Falcon 9 is going to drop them is in a lower orbit. That way, if any of them fails, they'll come back to Earth. They'll deorbit from orbital decay. They are in space, but there's a little tiny bit of atmosphere there, which can cause orbital decay. So if one of the satellites fails, and they can't communicate with it, they can't get the engines to start up, something happens, they'll deorbit relatively quickly, otherwise known as deorberate. It's gonna deorberate. So if they deorberate, as they say, I don't know who they is, they being me, deorberate, right? Once they deorberate, it's gonna deorberate. Or if they have to deorberate, they would do that because of the lower orbit that they're currently in. And they will, if all goes well, they will raise their orbit themselves using their onboard engines. And they'll get themselves up into a little higher orbit. So we got a bunch of things that we're going to cover here because we have some time before launch here. But before we do that, I didn't get to a ton of comments earlier, so I'm going to try to scroll back and see. Please play us Jim. Simon wants Jim. You want the American astronauts?
American astronauts on American rockets from American soil.
That's what you want? You want a Jim? What happens to the vehicle that's left behind? So the second stage there, that will deorberate. It's gonna deorberate, right? It's gonna deorberate. So that will intentionally deorberate. It's gonna deorberate. And that will come back and break up into a million pieces in the atmosphere, or burn up in the atmosphere. The debris field for that is, we pulled that up earlier. Here's our debris field that is off the coast of Australia down here. This is the debris field where the second stage will come back, break up in the atmosphere, and be destroyed. I'll pull this up just because I like this animation. We'll keep this going while I read through some comments. Fritz46, they're obviously aiming for New Zealand, but they are still failing. Are you saying they're trying to take out Rocket Lab or something? Let's go back a couple more here. Are you saying this is 52 pickup in space? It's a deck of it's a game of cards in space. The biggest game of cards you've ever seen. How soon do you think the satellites can come online? It takes a couple weeks for them to get to their operational altitude. I don't recall exactly how long it takes, but it's a couple weeks before they get to their operational altitude. SpaceX starts communicating with them right away after deployment to see if they're able to communicate with them and make sure everything's online and good to go. So they start communicating with them almost right away. But yeah, operational orbit is not until a couple weeks later because they gradually raise that orbit. William, one of our YouTube members, another amazing launch. It was. I'm excited that we finally got a launch in. Chad Colby, my bad. I thought this was a new booster. Oh, I saw your question earlier. Said, is there any new tech on this? Yeah, this is a reused booster. This is actually the same booster from Demo 2 that launched Bob and Doug to the International Space Station. This is the third reuse for this because they used it on Demo 2, they used it on Anasis 2, and now again for Starlink. And it still has the NASA logo on it. It's getting a little crispy, a little charbroiled, but it's still there. The NASA worm logo on the side of it. Disputant said, I'm sure SpaceX did some antenna away from the landing ship so it cannot shake from alignment. As far as I know, they're still using an antenna on the ship because all the support ships, you can actually track the support ships. All the support ships are away from it. They're well away from it. But I have noticed, and probably you guys have noticed, that the last couple of launches, they have been uninterrupted video feeds. Coincidence? Maybe, but we're starting to get pretty consistent video feeds, so maybe they did something to upgrade that. We don't really know. That would be pretty awesome if we could start consistently seeing clean video feeds. But it could just be, there's so many factors that could be at play. You know, weather could be a factor, how on center the booster is could be a factor, how energetic the landing burn has to be could be a factor. So we just don't know. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we still see interrupted video in the future, but I've been pleasantly surprised that all the recent landings have been uninterrupted video. Where's all the boats? Yeah, that hopefully SpaceX has the boats sorted out for the next Crew Dragon. They did mention that in the press conference for the next Crew Dragon landing, that they're going to have more Coast Guard ships out there to enforce the 10-mile keep-out zone. Everything space, can you please tell NASA and SpaceX not to do a night launch for Crew 1? Yeah. I would love to, because I don't want to be up live streaming it at 2 o'clock in the morning, but I have no say in that. And really, what it comes down to, it's all about orbital mechanics. So you got to launch when the space station is directly overhead, and it just so happens that if they want to launch in the end of October, the space station is going to fly over Florida in those early morning hours. So you can't, so your option is to launch early in the morning like that, or wait 2 or 3 weeks until it's, you know, overhead during the daytime. And that seems like an unnecessary delay to your science mission for just so the public can watch. I mean, I would love to be selfish and be like, but I don't want to get up at 2 in the morning. But I understand why they're doing it. Can we replay the landing? Yeah, Charles, we'll replay that in just a minute here. I wanted to go through some comments real quick. Using Starlink video from the drone ship, possibly. I think they've talked about using Starlink from the drone ship. From all the support ships, actually. The drone ships and the payload fairing catching ships. I don't know if they're currently using them, but they applied for a permit from the FCC to use them out there. You show launch again? Yeah, we'll do a replay in just a minute here. So if I'm in the Sahara Desert, I will be about to get on the internet without cell towers. Yeah, eventually. I mean, once Starlink covers the globe, I mean, we got to get more satellites than that. This initial batch, phase 1, is really going to service the US and Canada. But eventually, when we get thousands of satellites in orbit, this is going to cover the whole globe. So yeah, if you're in the Sahara Desert and you have a Starlink antenna, internet. I mean, remember, you still got to have a Starlink base station, which is the little UFO looking thing. Do I have one of those? Let me pull one of those up here. SpaceX tweeted one somewhere that I can pull up. Let's show that real quick, and then we'll go back and do a replay. There. Oh. Let me put, where do I want to put myself? Let me put myself over here. So this little UFO looking thing here, that's the satellite, that's the ground station there for Starlink. So you got to have one of these UFO dishes, and it's a PoE connection, power over Ethernet, so you need some power. It's only supposed to be just one cable to it. So a PoE Ethernet cable. PoE's power over Ethernet. So that means that the data and the power are all running through the same one cable. So you don't need an Ethernet cable and a power cable. You just need one. So everything goes to that one cable. So you need power. You need the antenna. You would probably need some sort of there's probably some sort of router as well that you would have to use to kind of communicate with all your devices. And then you put all that together, and yeah, Sahara Desert, you could have internet service. Middle of the Pacific Ocean, internet service. Middle of the Atlantic Ocean, internet service. You could have it all. Could be there. Now remember, with our satellites here, they currently do not service the poles, the polar regions. So you see big gap here on the South Pole, big gap here up at the North Pole. That means areas up here, your Scandinavian countries, Russia, northern Russia here, they've got no service up there. So eventually they've talked about adding service to those regions, but it's just not there yet. How many people live in the rural polar regions? I don't think many, but I don't know for sure. Yeah, it's no Starlink internet for Santa. No coverage for the UK. The UK it has some capability for coverage here. You can kind of see this is that's the northernmost coverage area for Starlink. Eventually, though, they should expand that, and you'll get a little more coverage. Hey, Bill, thanks for the super chat. Appreciate that. All right, so I'm going to pull up. Let's replay the launch here real quick, and then I got a couple more things we're going to talk about and show. Give me just 1 second. Let's pull up the replay here. Let's get our replay text up, and then we'll... Where is our replay text? There we go. All right, let's turn this back up.
10, 9.
Back it up just a touch, because I want to hear those sounds again.
30 seconds.
These final 30 seconds of terminal count.
Here we go. Listen.
T-minus 30 seconds.
Stage 1 flight press.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff.
We're pitching downrange.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
T plus 40 seconds, Falcon 9 successfully lifting off from Launch Pad 39A at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
All right, so while they're, we'll keep that playing here while we go through some questions. I'm gonna turn them down now that we listened to those awesome launch sounds. I love that. I love the little like squeal that you get right as they close out all the final stages there before launch. You hear like a little. How's that for a sound? How's that for a reenactment? Here, listen. You think I'm crazy? Listen.
T-minus 15 seconds.
Right at 10 seconds.
10, 9.
Right? Did you hear it? It's right there. It's the sound of the seal.
Stage 1 flight press.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7.
There it is. All right, we'll play launch again here.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff.
We're pitching downrange.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
All right, we'll turn that down here now. Let me get to a couple more comments while this is replaying here. Now that you guys all heard my impression of the SpaceX seal. Why is everything about animals on this channel? Lobsters, seals, mice, caterpillars, we got it all. I don't know. That's how we have fun. All right, let me back it up. Are you going to stream the Blue Origin launch coming up, the NS-13? Probably not. I usually don't stream the New Shepard launches. They're so quick. We'll probably talk about it on Discord, maybe live tweet it, but I usually don't cover those. Can't say I never will, but I usually don't. Matt says that's the squee of a rocket that knows it's going to space. Jason, and we feed them all the side carrots. That's all our animals. All our animals eat side carrots. That's right. Everybody new to the channel is like, what is this guy talking about? Lobsters and carrots and caterpillars and mice and seals and what is happening? I don't have time to explain them all, but if you join our Discord, here's my sales pitch here. If you join our Discord in the Hangout channel, there's a pinned message. You got to look at the pinned message. One of our awesome moderators put a pinned message in there and has a link to all the different moments of where all these things come from. The space lobster and the space caterpillar and the space mouse and all those different things. So if you're in Discord in the Hangout channel, look for the pinned messages and you'll see links to where all of those things started from. And if you join Discord, you can chat it up with like-minded space geeks for like myself. I'm in there, but we got 600 plus other people in there that all love space and love to chat it up and talk about what's happening in the space world. That's right, Matt says the Overlook Horizon glossary. I like your explanation better. The Overlook Horizon glossary is in Discord. Glossary of terms. I only know about the space mice. We're going to talk about the space mice here in just a second because a lot of people don't know what we're talking about there. And that was right around, what was that, like 4.5 minutes is when we saw that on the broadcast. So we'll explain that here in just a second. So you at least get in the know about what space mice are. Will Starlink cover the Middle East? We really need it. Yeah, eventually, yes. Not the initial phase, but eventually, yeah, it's going to cover the entire globe. Including, they're planning to eventually cover the polar regions as well. Right now, there's a big gap in the polar regions, but eventually, it will also cover the polar regions, I believe. What are the qualifications needed to become an astronaut? Tough to become an astronaut, but not impossible. I mean, they have astronauts that perform all sorts of duties, whether they're engineers or scientists or mission specialists in some particular research project. So really, you got to get into a science field, whether it's engineering, some sort of research field, any of those, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, art even. No point needing it if you're in the city though, right? Yeah, so Starlink internet is still probably not going to replace like big cities that have fiber optics. So it would be available, but it's probably not your go-to in a big city, especially if you have access to fiber optics. Like fiber optics is hardwired communications is likely always going to be faster than any sort of wireless communication system. But Starlink would really be good for like even I'm in kind of a suburban area and I have decent internet. So right now Starlink, I would not replace my internet service with Starlink because my internet service is better than what Starlink is offering. Starlink's internet connections, their bandwidth is going to be about 100 megabits per second is what they're expecting. So that's great speed, but I currently have better here with my broadband service provider. It's nice to have an alternative, but I currently have better speeds here. But if you just drive 5 minutes down the road, like I'm like really on the edge of kind of suburban territory here, you drive another 5 minutes down the road, like literally 5 minutes, like I'm like that close to the edge, literally 5 minutes down the road, they don't have access to that broadband internet service that I have. And so their option is DSL or nothing, and Starlink would be a great option for them. So it doesn't have to be like the Sahara Desert to be usable. I mean, I'm near Rochester, New York, and which is a fairly decent sized city. I'm outside of the city, but in the suburban area, but it's not too far away from the city. Like we're not in the middle of nowhere. We're not in the desert. We're not in, the middle of Arizona where there's nobody around. Like, there's people here, but just a little ways, and it could be useful. Oh, we missed the mouse during all that. Let me back it up so we can talk about the mouse. For those people that don't know what we're talking about. So the space mouse really, when we talk about the space mouse, there's a big conspiracy theory that goes on. Right here. You see this little bit here? This little thing that comes flying along the engine bell. I really just don't understand the thought process here. But a lot of people, the conspiracy theorists, think that this little thing here is proof that this is fake because there's a mouse that's running across the engine. Now, here's what I don't understand about it. Why does the mouse always run across that pipe? Always, on every launch. It runs across there. It's the most well-trained mouse I've ever seen. Every launch at almost the same time, it follows that same path. So what's really happening here, in case you want an actual scientific explanation here, there's a liquid oxygen vent port here. You can actually see, if you look really closely, you can see right here is the vent port, and you can see a little bit of white haze that's just off of it, like right here in this black section, you can see there's a little bit of white haze here. That's liquid oxygen venting out of the second stage there. That liquid oxygen then has vacuum solidification. It's basically solidifying as it comes into the vacuum of space there. So what that is, you can actually see it break off there. That's a perfect spot. Oh, I backed up too far. But you can see it, a little bit of it collects right here at the edge of the vent port. And then watch this vent port right here. Boom. Right there, it breaks off. So this is why, like, the conspiracy theorists don't take 2 seconds to watch the video for a minute. Like, right here, liquid oxygen, solidifying, boom, breaks off, and then you see the piece here, just slides along the tube there, just from the vibrations, like it's trying to get off the rocket, but it just it's stuck. It doesn't always do that, but that's what the conspiracy theorists will say is a mouse, which is just silly. So you see, like, here, it's already building up here again. You might see this piece break off another time. I don't know if it'll do it. Well, they flip-flop back and forth between the two screens, which also kind of adds to the conspiracy theory, because they think, like, oh, there's a mouse on the screen, they cut away. No, they just cut away routinely. So anyways, yeah, the cheese is over here, and so anyways, there's the space mouse. That's the explanation there. What are we at? Let's take a look at what we're at time-wise. 36 minutes, so we're second stage restart is at 42 minutes, so we got a little bit of time to go here. So we're going to keep going with this replay here while we get to some questions. Are you going to stream SN8? When is that? When is the projected date of that? Yes, I likely will stream SN8, assuming I don't have some sort of conflict or anything, but SN8 will be the big hop expected for Starship, going to 15 kilometers, or about 50,000 feet in altitude, which that's a big hop. Biggest one we've seen for Starhopper or Starship or any of that. So it's going to go up to about 50,000 feet, 15 kilometers, come back down and land. That is supposed to happen sometime later this month, but SN8 has not done its cryo testing yet, or actually it might have done some of it last night. I don't know. I woke up this morning to news about that I didn't have time to read. So they might have done cryo testing last night. I don't know. Somebody will have to tell me. I didn't have time to check that this morning. Michael wants to know who owns Starlink. Starlink is owned by SpaceX. So this is SpaceX's developed internet service. Developed in-house. Weirdest looking mouse, I know, right? It's also, it doesn't look like a mouse at all. Would you go to Mars if given the chance? Probably not. I don't think I would go to Mars. The moon? Maybe. I'd consider it. That would still be a big maybe, but I don't think I would go to Mars. I think we should go to Mars, just I don't want it to be me. I'm happy here. I can't do this if I'm on Mars. Deborah wants to know anything going on with Blue Origin. I never hear anything about them. Blue Origin is keeps all their plans kind of tight to the vest there. They do have a new Shepard launch coming up shortly, but it is they don't tell us a lot about development. Dano, did you see the water tower just before takeoff? Yes, this is pad 39A, and the water tower at 39A, when it fills, there's an overflow valve, and it spills out everywhere. I'm assuming that's what you're talking about. Did they do it on this launch? I don't see it. It's actually not spilling over, at least not that I see here. So usually that water tower at 39A will start overflowing. Did it do it on this launch? Oh, there it is. Yeah, there you go. I was like, I don't remember seeing it. Yeah, so that's right there's the spillover here on the water tower. That's normal for 39A. It does that every launch. Basically, that's how you know that the water tower is full. All right, let's go back. We'll go back right before landing here, so we can see that. Colin says, just drop a few Starlink satellites on your way to Mars and we can stay connected. There you go. Will Starlink cover South Asia? Yeah, Starlink will cover everything. Remember, here's our, where is it? What did I do with it? Oh, there it is. Here's our web. Starlink's gonna cover everything in this band here. Everything's gonna get service. Right now, only the polar regions are left open. But these blue lines here, these are Starlink paths. Now, they're a little more spaced out here, so they don't have enough for service over in this region, but eventually they will. They're just a little more spaced out. So if your question is, will Starlink cover insert geographic region, as long as insert geographic region is not one of the polar regions, the answer is yes. And I guess by polar region, the only like populated regions that are going to miss out on the initial rollout here of Starlink: Greenland, Iceland, Scandinavian countries here, northern Russia. Like those are, maybe Alaska up here. Those are going to be tight on coverage initially because they're so close to the poles. Let's see, where are we time-wise? All right, let's go back to live because I think they're back here.
Yes, we had a successful liftoff at 7:29 a.m. Eastern Time. Successfully recovered that booster. Second stage is on a nominal orbit, and we're just awaiting about 10 seconds from now what's called second engine start number 2. That is ignition of the Merlin vacuum engine to bring us into a circular orbit.
So we're gonna get a restart.
MVac burn 2, and good shutdown.
And it's quick. It's a 2-second burn.
So super fast second engine start number 2, and then followed by second engine cutoff number 2. That was to raise the perigee, or the lowest point of our orbit, to be circular and similar to the apogee. And we also, looking at the data, have confirmation of a good circular orbit. And we actually got some cool shots as well from recovery. This is a shot from our drone ship. Just read the instructions, and you can see on the horizon there, that is the first stage from today's mission on, of course, I Still Love You. Again, that's the third landing for that booster, 61st overall recovery. And we actually caught a fairing half today as well.
Yeah.
That's the active fairing half. And this fairing half has flown 3 times, landed it right square in the middle of the net. We did have to abort the catch attempt on the passive half, but we're in the process of recovering that from the water on our other recovery vessel. So from here, second stage is going to continue in this orbit for about the next 16 minutes. During this time, it'll actually start to pick up a spin on its central axis. It'll start using its attitude control system to start a small rotation, and that's to give the Starlink satellites the momentum they need to space themselves after they do their deployment activities. That's expected to happen at about T+1 hour, or around 8:29 a.m. Eastern Time. So we'll see you back then.
Okay, a couple things we have to talk about here from what we just saw there. We got a couple of cool things. There was also some subliminal messaging in there, which we'll talk about that as well. There's another SpaceX conspiracy. But so let's back up for a second. We got a unique view here, which is this view which the reason we were able to get this view is because SpaceX has both the Starlink and the GPS missions. The booster landings out there are almost in the exact same place in the ocean. So there's actually 2 drone ships that are out there right now. There's, of course, I Still Love You, which is in the distance there, that caught the booster that's way over there. That's the drone ship, and the camera view that we're actually seeing here now is from the other drone ship, Just Read the Instructions, which is going to stay out there and wait to catch the GPS-3 mission, assuming that goes okay. So they were both supposed to launch within a day of each other, and so you got Just Read the Instructions way out there, and then this one here is, or no, sorry, Of Course I Still Love You is out in the distance. This one is Just Read the Instructions. Confusing, I know. And then that's up there is the tug that's holding that's the tugboat that is maneuvering Just Read the Instructions there. So that's kind of a unique view. We don't get that very often. I wonder if they'll have camera footage of the actual landing. That would be cool. They didn't show it to us, but I wonder if they'll show us a video feed from Just Read the Instructions of the booster landing on Of Course I Still Love You. Like, they used to do that a long time ago when they were first trying to learn how to land a booster on the drone ship. They would have basically like a drone, or they would film it from far off, but we haven't seen that in a long time. They stopped doing that. And so maybe we could see that again. It would be awesome to get video footage from Just Read the Instructions of the booster landing on Of Course I Still Love You. That would be really cool. And then we've got, of course, the payload fairing catch. Looks like they got half of it dead center in the net here. I don't know whether this is Go Miss Chief or Go Miss Tree, but looks like they did catch half of the payload fairing. Not the other half, they said. They said they aborted the attempt, so they didn't even try to go for it. They have to, right before the catch attempt, about 30 minutes after launch, they make a go, no-go decision on whether or not to attempt the payload fairing catch. So that go, no-go decision basically decides, what are the sea conditions, what's the parachute, how fast is it coming down? Is the parachute doing okay? Is it steering okay? Are they close enough? Are they going to even be able to do it? So they make that go, no-go decision, between 30 and 45 minutes-ish. And apparently on one of the halves of the payload fairing, they had a no-go decision on that. Now, the other thing that we need to talk about here is our subliminal messaging right there. That's another SpaceX conspiracy theory here. A lot of times you will see they will briefly, like really briefly, if we back this up 5 seconds here, right at 44:10 on the clock, boom, they get that quick flash, and everybody's like, oh, what was that? It's aliens. It's not aliens. That is the inside. Where is it? Let me sidecar it over. That is the inside of the liquid oxygen tank. So liquid oxygen has kind of a bluish color, that like purpley bluish color that you're seeing. That's liquid oxygen. That is the inside of the liquid oxygen tanks. You can actually see, like behind my head here, there's one right here. This is a composite overwrap pressure vessel, or COPV. There's another one up there above my head, right here. Those are COPVs inside the liquid oxygen tank. But they have a camera inside the liquid oxygen tank, which occasionally, like, they're just scrolling through the cameras here. Like, it's not a crazy production that's going on. They're just scrolling through the cameras on the feed, and occasionally they go to this liquid oxygen camera and they're like, oh, not that one. We want the next one. Like, they're not trying to hide anything. It's just they think that this is boring because it's not really anything to look at. It's just liquid. But anyways, this is the inside of the liquid oxygen tank. And the reason they have a camera there is they're trying to make sure that the liquid oxygen stays at the back of the tank. Because remember, as soon as they shut off the engines and they're no longer accelerating, the second stage is in 0G, which means that liquid oxygen could float around everywhere. And when they go to start up the engines again, there's no liquid oxygen going out the tank. the way they fix that is they backfill, as the tank drains, they backfill the tank with helium to keep it pressurized and keep all of that liquid oxygen at the back of the tank. And then usually when they start up the engines, there's actually a short little thruster fire to kind of push the vehicle forward just a little bit. Kind of gives it a little like this. It's not quite that dramatic, but just a little push forward to make sure that the liquid oxygen really pushes to the back of the tank, and then they can start the engines up. So this is a camera just to keep an eye on the inside of the liquid oxygen tank, but it always looks weird. It looks like this alien, and especially if they stay on this for a long time, like a couple of seconds, the liquid oxygen does this little and kind of wobbles around, and it looks really weird and freaky. So that's what that is there. Okay, where are we on our timeline? T plus 50 minutes here. We got our payload pair. So the next thing really is just our deployment, which is at 1 hour and 1 minute. So we got about 11 minutes to deployment. Now, one thing they talked about, let's see if we can do this real quick in Kerbal Space Program. One thing they talked about was circularizing their orbit. And the reason for that is once you go into orbit, let's see, how quickly can we do this? Because we only have 11 minutes, so I don't want to spend a ton of time. Let's do this one here. It's going to be a Starship. And launch. Okay, so this is Kerbal Space Program, if you're not familiar with it. If you're not familiar with Kerbal Space Program, even if you're not that big into gaming, but you're big into like space and rockets, like you gotta get this game. It's super inexpensive. It's like, what is it these days? Like $30 maybe, US? It is the best way to learn how rockets work. Like, it's awesome. And I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I'm gonna use what's called MechJeb, which is an autopilot. And really, I'm just using that because we're live broadcasting, and I wanna get there quickly. So what I want to show, I guess we'll go to this view here. I want to show us getting into orbit here. We'll take the Starship to orbit. And then I'll show you why we have to circularize. So as our Starship that we have here is heading off into orbit, you can see what happens to our orbital path here. So right here is where our Starship is, and this is the path growing. So basically, if the engine's shut off right now, it'll follow this ballistic trajectory, and it's gonna land back in the ocean. Obviously, we don't want that, so it's gonna continue to grow like this. And it will stay in this parabolic trajectory until you circularize. There's a couple ways. You can go direct to kind of a circular orbit. It's not easy to do that, especially if you're playing in Kerbal Space Program. It is easy if you're cheating like me and you're using MechJeb, but we'll let this get into orbit here. It's going to take a second. We're getting a little bit of heating going on. Means we're going probably a little bit too fast. So remember, you could get heating during ascent too. It's not just during re-entry that you could get heating. If you go too fast during launch, you can get heating as well. We should probably limit our acceleration a little bit, but that's all right. We're gonna stage in a second. Just I'm letting it go on autopilot so I can keep reading our comments. Oh, there you go. So there's We're gonna stage it there. We'll disengage our autopilot. We don't even need to all right, so once it gets dropped off into orbit here, you can see I got a bunch of different orbits, so it's hard to tell. I should have done a fresh batch so you didn't see so many of these orbits here. Let's get rid of the flight engineer stuff here. If you look closely, this bluish path here, kind of see it. This bluish path is the path that we're on. Right here. And if we want to if we want to stay in space, so we're in space now. This is what a lot of people don't understand about space. To go up, you go up to get to space. To stay in space, you got to go sideways. So right now we're in a coast phase. Should do a short burn so it's more visible. Let's see. Yeah, let me do this. I'm going to revert this. Let's launch again. How much time do we have on our... How much time do we have? 56 minutes. We got like 5 minutes to do this. Let's do it again. Let's do it one more time. Let me get my autopilot. Ascent autopilot. Let's go up to like 200 kilometers. Gauge autopilot. Okay, go. Okay. Hurry up and get up there. But basically what I started saying, to go to space, you go up. But to stay in space, you have to go sideways. If you just go up, you're coming back down. Earth's gravity is going to pull you back down. So if you want to stay in space, you have to go sideways very fast. For Earth, it's about 17,500 miles per hour when you're in low Earth orbit. That'll keep you in space because essentially you're perpetually falling back to Earth, but you're going so fast horizontally that you're missing the Earth. So you're going this way, you're falling, but by the time you fall, you've passed the Earth. Now it's going to pull you this way, but you're traveling. So yeah, you get the idea. Scrubtober exists in KSP2. Yeah, right. That's what we call a redo. It's official rocket terminology. Redo. So it's a rocket mulligan. So you can see, here's our orbital path growing right there. These are all the other orbital paths that I have. How much time do we have? We got just a couple minutes. Make sure that SpaceX is not back already. Go through some atmospheric heating again during ascent. We're going a little bit fast. I keep dropping frames in my broadcast, and I'm not entirely sure why. How's the quality for you guys? Not sure why I keep dropping frames. The next GPS 3 launch, we don't know the answer to that yet. SpaceX back yet? No, not yet. We don't know when GPS 3 is going to launch yet. They brought the rocket horizontal, and they will try again soon here, hopefully. Okay, so here, this one here, this is our orbit now. So you can see the blue line here. That's the current orbit that we're on, is this blue line. If we do nothing, we're in this coast phase right now. So the engines are off. We're coasting. If we do nothing in this blue line is where we're going to go. So we would coast, and we would go right back to Earth. We'd land on the other side. We'd re-enter the Earth and come right back. So the reason for that second stage burn is to restart, or is to circularize that orbit, which is what this yellow path is. So the blue path is the orbit that we're currently on. The yellow path is our target orbit. That's what the rocket is going to do after its second burn here. So it's in a coast phase right now. Coast phase is going to last about a couple more minutes. Let's see. Let's disengage this. We'll do that. Like that. There we go. Oh, SpaceX is back. We'll come back to this in a second. Pause this. Go back to SpaceX.
5 kilometers above the Earth's surface. And coming up next will be deployment of the 60 Starlink satellites. We actually just saw a shot of them earlier. Now, the second stage has picked up a slight spin. It picked that up from its attitude control systems. And that's to give the Starlink satellites enough momentum so they can space themselves out after deployment, which is expected just about 40 seconds from now. And you may have noticed it's a little bit dark. We're actually on the nighttime side of the planet. And a cool shot right now from a camera on the top of the second stage, looking up at the stack of 60 Starlink satellites. Starlink is part of our space-based internet constellation, and we're continuing to build up that network with today's launch. It's coming up about 10 seconds. Expect to see payload deployment.
Should have deployment. Watch that tension rod that's right above my head. Should release here. Any sec. There it goes. You can see it going right now. Tension rod's releasing.
Starlink deployed confirmed.
And now they just kind of fall away.
So you can see the Starlink satellites gently floating away from the second stage. Now, shortly they will, once they've had a chance to space out a little bit, they'll deploy their solar arrays, and over the next few days and weeks, they'll start to distance themselves out using their onboard ion thrusters to make their way to their final operational orbits, about 550 kilometers above the Earth's surface. So happy to see them off and on their way to complete their mission.
Bit of confusion on the number of
With that, it's actually going to bring our webcast coverage to a close. We want to give a big thanks to the Range and the Federal Aviation Administration for supporting today's mission. If you're interested in getting future news about Starlink, head on over to starlink.com and sign up for updates. With that, we hope you have a wonderful rest of the day and a happy end to Scrubtober.
Happy end to Scrubtober. All right. It's the end of Scrubtober. Everybody, let's jam out. All right, that's enough. I'm excited. End of Scrubtober. We're good. So a little bit of confusion on the number of satellites, whether it's 60 or 16. It is 60 satellites. 60 satellites. 60. That's the number of satellites that were deployed there. And remember, again, let's show this one more time here so you can get an idea. This is what it looks like when they deploy. So what we just watched, the end of Scrubtober here, they rotate on the central axis there, spin around. This is an animation of what we actually just watched. And then that tension rod releases, and they just go. And it's because of that spin that they spread out over time here. They do have onboard thrusters, but they spread out first. If you wanted to launch 60 satellites and actually spread them out manually, you need a spring pusher system in between every single satellite. That's a lot of weight, that's a lot of space. They don't need that. So they do this spin maneuver to fan them out just like that. There's nothing in between those satellites. They just let them go, and that spin maneuver fans them out like a deck of cards there. So that's kind of the idea. And the reason that spin does that is because if you think about it, with the spin, the satellites that are on the outside of the the spinning stack there are traveling a little bit faster than the satellites on the inside of the stack because they are covering more distance. The circle is bigger for the satellites on the outside than it is for the satellites on the inside. So the satellites on the outside are covering more distance in the same amount of time, so they're spinning faster. And so that little tiny bit of difference in speed causes them to fan out and spread out all on their own. And we mentioned earlier, sometimes they crash into each other, they bump into each other. It's not a big deal. They're designed to do that. And then eventually when they get enough space between themselves and they've been checked out and they can communicate all right, then they start to raise their orbit. They put them in this lower orbit mostly so that if something happens and they're unable to communicate with it, the satellite fails, it will quickly deorbit, which we call deorberate around here. It's gonna deorberate. It will deorberate. Deorberate. Yeah, that's what I said. It's gonna deorberate. Right, it's gonna deorberate, and it will come back to Earth, and the broken satellites will not be just space junk. So they put it into this lower Earth orbit for checkouts, and then they spread them out, raise their orbit with onboard ion thrusters to get them into their operational orbit, which is about 500 and what is it? Let me pull up what the orbit is. 550 kilometers. I couldn't remember if it was 500 or 550. 550 kilometers is their operational orbit. They get dropped off in an elliptical orbit that is 390 by 210. So actually what we ought to do, so let's go back to Kerbal. Let me show you. Let's get rid of this. We got to get you back over here to Kerbal. Let me show you. Let me change our apogee to, what did I say? It's 390. Remove all nodes, create and execute. So, let me show you the orbit they get dropped off in. We'll go exactly to remove all nodes. Create and execute. Okay, I don't know why it's not executing, but oh, there we go. So, look, you can see our orbit raise here. And we're still in this parabolic trajectory. We're not in a stable orbit yet. So there we go. There's 390. So that's basically the initial burn of the Falcon 9, gets that apogee up to 390, and then when they say that they circularize, what they're actually not going circular, they're going more circular. So they're dropped off at 390 by 210. So let's go, we'll make our perigee 210. And then we have to go up. So you can see, it's a little bit tough to see, but you can see this blue line. This is our spacecraft. There's another one here from a different day. But here's our spacecraft. It's following this blue line right here. It's a little bit tough to see, but you see this blue line. It's going to head up here. This point right here, this is the peak of our orbit here, otherwise known as apogee or apoapsis. So here's our spacecraft traveling to apogee, the highest point of our orbit. The lowest point of our orbit is called perigee or periapsis. Right now, our perigee is negative because it means we're going to crash into the Earth. If we actually look at our Kerbal engineer, oh wait, there we go. We just did our burn. So there's our quick burn right there. We just raised our orbit. We raised our perigee here now. So it's out of the Earth, so now we're not going to crash back into Earth. So we had to coast up to perigee, or coast up to apogee, burn the engines again, which raised our perigee over here on the other side of the planet. And now this is the orbit that Starlink was just dropped off into. So it's 390 by 210. The apogee, 390 kilometers. The perigee, a little closer to Earth, 210 kilometers. So it's circular-ish, but not perfectly circular. If you wanted it perfectly circular, it would be, 390 all the way around. That would be a perfectly circular orbit. So this is technically an elliptical orbit, but just a little bit of a elliptical shape to it. And that leaves a little bit of fuel in the tank for Starship for the Falcon 9 second stage to come back and break up in the atmosphere. What is the software? This great explanation of it. This is Kerbal Space Program. If you haven't played Kerbal Space Program, even if you're not into gaming, if you're just into space, I highly recommend Kerbal Space Program, because not only is it a fun game, but it's very educational in learning how orbits work. Just try to rendezvous with another spacecraft in Kerbal. You get back to me in a couple weeks when you do that. No, I mean, you can do it. You can do it in an hour, but it's way harder than you think. If you're not familiar with orbital mechanics, it's very difficult to rendezvous with another spacecraft. And it's not until you start playing Kerbal Space Program that you might go like, oh man, this is not at all how I thought this worked. "44 Starlink satellites have been deorbited." I believe the word you're looking for is deorbitate. Deorbitate, right? Deorbitate. That's what we say around here. It's gonna deorbitate. It's not a real word. It's deorbit. You're right. But we make up our own words around here. And by we, I mean me. And when I say that we make them up, I mean we unintentionally say weird things, and then we turn them into memes and a channel theme of some sort so that I can lean into my mistakes. Because it makes them easier to deal with if I just lean into them. It's gonna deorbitate. All right, what website were you using that showed all the Starlink orbits? That's called Stuff in Space. If you're in the YouTube chat, you can type !stuff, and it'll get you to the Stuff in Space link. What happens to the delivery craft? So the second stage will deorbitate. Deorbitate, right. It's gonna deorbitate. It's gonna deorbitate, otherwise known as deorbit, and it will break up into the atmosphere. Here's the debris field right there. So you can see where it's all going to break up and disintegrate. This is the debris field off the coast of Australia. Down under. Anita says, and into merch. Right, most of my mistakes turn into merch on this channel. They turn into a t-shirt of some sort, or... That's how I handle mistakes. So I turn them into merch. Are we cleaning space junk? There is some initiatives to try to clean up some of the space junk that's out there. I mean, the current methodology really is, anything new that we put into orbit has to have a deorbit plan, otherwise known as a deorbitation planification. They need to planify their deorbitation maneuveralism to get the... I just can't. I can't say that with a straight face. They have to plan to get their spacecraft out of orbit at some point. Plan for anomalies, which is why Starlink deploys in this lower Earth orbit initially. And they also have to plan for end-of-life deorbitation maneuveralism at the end of its life. Okay. So, That's our current methodology for dealing with space junk, is just to make sure that everything that we put up there has to deorbit. Right, has to deorbit at some point or have some sort of plan. Too many big words, brain hurty. So what did I see land? What you saw land was the first stage. So remember, there's 2 stages on this rocket. There is the... Oh, here, hold on. We get my first stage. I should put it on my regular desk here instead of off to the side. Remember, the Falcon... The Falcon 9 here. We're going to put our Crew Dragon up on top. Here's your Falcon 9. I can't... Oh, no! I broke it. I broke the engine. It's alright, I have another one. I broke the engine bell. Okay, get rid of that one. I have another on standby. This one also broke. It's super glued back together. I have more upstairs that are not super glued together. Let's try to be a little gentler with this. So, there's our Falcon 9. Goes into orbit. Just a boy and his toys here. Into orbit. Separates. This guy continues on. This guy turns it around. Entry burn. Landing burn. Lands it. Boom. Right there. So that's what you saw land was this big part, the first stage. The second stage continues on into orbit. And then it deploys our satellites, or Crew Dragon in this case, goes off. Or for Starlink, actually deploys like this, like we showed in our animation here. Spins around, right? Deploys our satellites. These stay in space. Second stage then also turns around, comes back, and breaks up in the atmosphere. And it ends up like this, in pieces. There. That's how it works. Is that a 3D print? Yes, that's my 3D print. If you join our Discord, I think the 3D print that I used is in the 3D printing channel in our Discord. So jump on there. What are the yellow dots in stuff in space? I don't remember. We looked at that before. The yellow dots. Oh, the yellow dots is unknown debris is what it is. So it's debris that they are tracking, but they don't know what it is. So that's what the yellow is in stuff in space. So the if you're looking at the stuff in space map, red is satellites, blue is rocket bodies, gray is debris. So here, if we get rid of our search here, because this is going to show you, this shows you everything right here. Everything that we have that we're tracking in orbit. Red is satellites, blue is a rocket body. It'd be like a second stage that didn't deorbit. It's going to deorbit. Gray is debris. That could be like nuts and bolts and pieces of metal and stuff like that. And yellow is stuff that we're like, well, we know that's up there and we're tracking it, but we don't know what it is. Like this one here, Object AA, Object K. They're like, well, that's something, but we don't know what. So that's what the yellow dots are. Didn't the Chinese blow up one of their satellites? Yes. Yeah, so much stuff. There is a lot of stuff in space. Look at it all. And you can see, the nice thing is you can see this ring out here. See the ring of red? That's geostationary orbit right there. Makes it very obvious what geostationary orbit is. You can kind of see medium Earth orbit, which is what, if we go like this way, you can kind of make out this ring here, which is medium Earth orbit. That's like your GPS satellites. GPS satellites go into medium Earth orbit. This is your geostationary orbit, and then low Earth orbit you can see is this mess, this fur ball here of stuff. That's low Earth orbit here. But really, like, it looks like a lot, and it is, but that's not. There's lots of space up there. It's just tough to see, like. you zoom in a little bit, you can see there's lots of space between them. How do I get SpaceX rocket models? Well, this one is 3D printed. Like, I just printed this at my house. So if you have a 3D printer and you jump on our Discord channel, you can type !Discord in the YouTube chat. You can get 3D prints like this to print your own if you have a 3D printer. So GPS is the farthest orbit. No, GPS is in medium Earth orbit. So GPS is, if we look from like the top angle, this is medium Earth orbit right here. Here, I can go like this. Here's Navstar here's medium Earth orbit right there. Those are your GPS satellites. You can kind of see this faint ring here. These are the hidden satellites. This faint ring, this is geostationary orbit, which is further away. So this is the Navstar constellation, which is where GPS satellites, the GPS-3 mission is going to launch to this orbit here. So that's medium Earth orbit, and then you can see this, the little bit of fur around the Earth there is low Earth orbit. So you got low Earth orbit, medium Earth orbit, geostationary orbit would be the, kind of the furthest stable orbit away that we have. There's not really a particular, like, you can orbit further. You can see, like, you got some of these that are coming out further in these highly elliptical orbits, or even like this. Even, I wonder if I can pull it up. Like, here's Tess, the transiting exoplanet survey satellite. I can't even zoom out enough to show it, but here's Tess's orbit, which is way out there, even past geostationary orbit. That's the Tess mission. That's the telescope that I actually got to watch launch back in 2018. Watch that launch in person. There's a video on our channel. And that's where that is. How far is that? That apogee on that, I can't see it, it's behind my thing here, is 401,000 kilometers by 81,000 kilometers. It is currently at 107,000 kilometers, is the current position of it. So how do I join the Discord group? Type !Discord in the YouTube chat, and our friendly Nightbot will give you a link to Discord. And I will also, I'll drop it in, since the commands don't work in Facebook, Periscope, and Twitch, I'll manually drop it in there as well. And then I'll take this opportunity, just as we're getting close to wrapping up, I'll take this opportunity to say, if you want to support the channel, consider becoming a member on the channel, or consider becoming a Patreon member, and you can get some behind-the-scenes access to our secret Discord channels, and you can get early access to our videos, like today's video, which is coming out later today. Look for that. Make sure if you're subscribed, you get your notification bell on, because I got a video coming out later today that I'm pretty excited about. I'm excited about the video, but I'm also excited about the concept in general. You'll see when it comes out. So that video is coming out later today. And if you were a YouTube member with Rocket Engineer or Astronaut tier, or if you're a Patreon member in the whatever the top two, there's 3 tiers of each one. The top 2 tiers get early access to videos. That's what I'm trying to say. So if you're in the top 2 tiers of YouTube memberships or Patreon, you can get early access to our videos, like the video coming out today. Patreon members got access to it yesterday. So anyways, and it helps support the channel. All of that money goes right back into it. Overlook Horizon is a nonprofit organization, so I don't get any of the money personally. It all just goes right back into the channel, whether it's cameras or lighting or getting, video clips or taking trips to NASA or anything like that. It's all for the channel. I see none of the money personally. Let me get you a link to Patreon. Somebody on Facebook said, can you send me a link? Here, I'll put the Patreon link in Facebook here for you. There you go. So yeah, none of the money comes to me personally, because Overlook Horizon is a an official 501c3 nonprofit organization in the US, so I get none of the money. All goes back into the channel. Like I said, cameras, lighting, video equipment, trips to NASA when, you know, things are safe to do that again. And that's what it all gets used for. It's all just for the channel to make cool content. That's what we're trying to do. That's all it is. I have a regular job. I have a regular full-time job that I get paid for, so the money is not for me. The money is for the channel. There you go. I'm actually personally a contributor to the channel as well, because I don't see the money myself. I personally am a contributor to the channel too. So yeah, there's my sales pitch. If you want to help support it, because really I just want to try to make some cool content. And somebody asked, do you still do weather balloon launches? Yes, we will still do weather balloon launches. I mean, this year's been kind of a bit of a bummer. That was Shiva on Periscope. We will do weather balloon launches, but this year's kind of been weird because the whole pandemic situation. So this year's probably going to be no balloon launches, and we'll hopefully pick it up again in the spring. We'll see. I hope. One other question from Dan Barry on Facebook. Are orbits circular or elliptical? It depends where you want to go. Some orbits are circular, some are elliptical. Most orbits for operational satellites are circular in some capacity, but not all. Like geostationary, circular, Navstar, circular. I mean, they want to, even Starlink will be circular. They want to have kind of a consistent orbital altitude there. But something like Tess, the transiting exoplanet survey satellite here, this is not circular, this is elliptical, and that's intentional because they want the satellite to get really far away from Earth to make its observations, but they want it to come close to Earth again, which is where they transfer all the data. So basically, Tess comes out, it performs survey operations here where they're taking pictures, and then right here, then it starts, when it gets to its close approach to Earth, it starts transmitting all the data back to Earth when it's at its closest area here. So transmits all the data back, blah, 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 and then it starts another round of survey photos. So elliptical can be beneficial, circular can be beneficial. All just depends on what your mission is. All right, everybody, I think that's it for me. I'm going to wrap up here now. We finally ended Scrubtober, Scrub Fest. We ended it. It's done. It's over. Hopefully for good here now. We can carry on. We don't know when GPS 3 is going to happen. Hopefully in a couple of days. We don't know. We'll get an update here soon. But jump on our Discord. You'll get updates there. You can also chat with all our like-minded space geeks like myself. I'm on there pretty frequently as well. Probably the best place to reach me if you have questions for me directly is on our Discord. And we'll be back again. So our communication needs close contact. No, well, it doesn't need close contact. It's just better if it's closer. You can get faster connection. So, all right. Yeah, so jump on the Discord. We'll have more there, and then keep an eye out for my video coming out later today. And there'll be more of that. Probably going to come out this afternoon, so. All right, everybody. That's going to do it for me. My name's Tori. This is Overlook Horizon. Thanks for joining me here today, and I will see you on the next video. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day. Goodbye.